Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host TJ Mabarty. Today we are going to be looking ahead at the upcoming NFC Championship weekend games between the Chiefs and the Ravens and the Lions and the 49ers. That'll take up the majority of the first half of the show, and then in the latter half we will be talking about some updates in the head coaching cycle in the NFL, which does not include Bill Belichick. So we will be talking about what is next for the legendary coach. And then finally, to wrap up the show, we are going to be touching on another historic franchise in a sense, the Golden State Warriors, who have just dropped another game last night against the Sacramento Kings. So we're going to be taking a look at that team and asking the question whether or not they have reached the point where they are no longer in contention. Before we get into the show today, just want to remind you all to please remember to like and follow. Helps us out a lot. And for any of our live viewers, just remember to use that link that is scrolling across the bottom ticker to help get your questions the priority they deserve to help tip. Again, helps us out a lot. That is streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. So without further ado, getting into our first preview here, the Chiefs versus the Ravens. This game is taking place in Baltimore. The first postseason matchup between Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson in their careers. Mahomes has won the regular season matchup series so far. He is 3-1 against Lamar, but obviously different stakes here. Now Mahomes' second true road playoff game after defeating Josh Allen and the Bills last week on the road. And meanwhile, the Baltimore Ravens, yes, maybe a little bit of a slow start, but a truly dominant performance for them on both sides. So getting into this matchup here, the Ravens, as of today, are 4-point favorites. They were initially 3.5-point favorites, but that line has since shifted. So before we get into predictions, just some key injury updates for the Chiefs. Joe Thuney, their all-pro guard the past two seasons, he is listed as doubtful for the game. He went down late in their matchup last week with a pec injury. There's speculation that it is a torn pec, so he is not expected to play, which is pretty significant. Especially tough timing losing him now, coming up against the Ravens, who had the most sacks in the NFL this season. That defensive front is monster, so tough timing there with losing Joe Thuney. They didn't end up getting home last week, but they really dominated, in my opinion, the Houston front throughout the entire game. On the Ravens side of this, Mark Andrews is now expected to play. He went down with a serious ankle injury during their Week 11 matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals. It was initially speculated that he would be done for the season, but he's been ramping up in practice the past couple weeks. He was listed as a full participant today, so good news on that front, and I'm sure that the Ravens are thrilled to have him back. Anything that they can get from him that at this point is a positive. Now, obviously, it's never good to lose a player to injury in general, especially your top threat. But that being said, again, considering the fact that Mark Andrews, anything that they get out of him is a positive at this point, I think that him missing the time that he did, it was really the first time in Lamar's career that he didn't have Andrews, and somewhat as a result, he was forced to spread the ball around a little bit more. And subsequently, I think that Isaiah Likely, their backup tight end, has been phenomenal in Andrews' absence. He's been a true red zone threat in the 7 full games in which Andrews has not played with the Ravens since Week 11. likely has 6 touchdowns, so he's been ramping up. He had one last week against the Texans. So this Baltimore offense that's been so good, adding more so to it. Another couple injury updates on the Ravens here. Marlon Humphrey, their number 1 quarterback, he has had limited participation in practice the past few days. He missed last week. And their starting guard, Kevin Zeitler, who got injured during that Texans game, he did return to practice on Thursday. So looking at this matchup as a whole, this is the number 1 scoring defense from the regular season versus the number 2 scoring defense in the regular season. Going into last week's game in the divisional round, I did a top 5 units between offenses and defenses remaining out of the 8 teams that were remaining. And I had the Ravens defense 1 and the Chiefs defense 2. Both groups have been unbelievable this season, and both were great last week. The Ravens did not allow a single touchdown. The Texans scored on just a punt return touchdown. Other than that, no touchdowns for the Texans. And the Chiefs, while they did get pushed around a bit early in that game, they really buckled down and played lockup defense down the stretch of that Bills game to help them secure the victory. I think that if you look at the team's numbers as a whole from the regular season, if there is any sort of a flaw with either of these groups, it is neither one of them have been great against the run all season. The Chiefs were ranked 17th during the regular season, and as I just mentioned, they were getting pushed around for a good bit there in the Buffalo game before tightening up. They allowed 182 yards on the ground, though, specifically to Josh Allen, who had 72. Now they're going to be facing up against a Lamar Jackson, who we all know how well he can use his legs. So I think that that's really going to be the key matchup here, because you're talking about the Baltimore Ravens offense that runs it better than anybody else in the NFL. 156.5 rush yards per game during the regular season, more than 15 more yards per game than any other team in the NFL. Quite a significant margin. They ran for 229 yards last week against the Texans. So it's going to be a tough job for this Chiefs front specifically in this coming week. Now, I thought that it was interesting the way that as that game progressed, they were able to make adjustments instead of rushing so hard at Josh Allen. They never actually got home on any sacks, but what they were doing is they were having their linemen sort of stay more so at the line of scrimmage. Now, they lost Willie Gay early in that game, who going into the matchup was supposed to be the QB spy for Josh Allen. And once that part was removed from their scheme, they sort of had to come up with other ways to limit him on the ground. Allen still had a good game on the ground. He had 18 rushes on 3 runs he had 18 yards on 3 rushes in the fourth quarter, so they didn't entirely eliminate him. And again, we're talking about Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson here, who are 2 of, if not the best 2 rushing quarterbacks in the NFL, so they at least got somewhat of a simulated look almost in a playoff environment for Lamar. But Lamar is just that much more dangerous, in my opinion, and I think that it's going to be a test for them. But again, the Chiefs linemen started just playing the line of scrimmage more so. You saw Chris Jones and others just camping out there. Chris Jones even got a pass deflection he wasn't even trying to rush. He was just staying at the line of scrimmage, keeping eyes on Allen, and trying to maintain protection as best as possible. I think that the Bills did run a handful of quarterback design plays, but they're just not even as nuanced, really, as Todd Monken and Lamar Jackson's offense there in Baltimore. So I think that is going to be a tough test. Now, on the Kansas City side of this, Their offense, they have looked just about as good as they have all season after questions surrounding them the entire year about were their weapons not good enough, what's going on there, and they've been really good. Travis Kelce, who he went through a really quiet stretch to end the regular season, he's been much more effective. Rashee Rice, their rookie, I've been really impressed with his maturity throughout the course of the season, and it's asking maybe a lot to expect him to be, he's not going to be a Tyreek Hill that they had during their initial Super Bowl run, but I think that he has developed into, and currently is still, it's an active process of him. He could be a real number one wide receiver for the Chiefs going forward. How effective will he be in this matchup against a very good defense? We are still to see. Now, tough news for the Chiefs is that running back Isaiah Pacheco has not been practicing this week with a toe and ankle injury. Initial diagnostics show that it could be turf toe, which is a brutal blow if he's not going to be able to go, because I think the Chiefs are a much more well-rounded offense when he is playing for them, especially against this defensive group. You are going to need to be able to run the ball against them, and that would be a very tough loss if he is unavailable to play. As far as my picks here, I'm going to go with the Ravens, and obviously right away you have to worry about you're picking against Patrick Mahomes, and that is my one worry here. But other than Patrick Mahomes, I think that the Ravens are just top to bottom a better football team than the Chiefs. The Chiefs are great, they have great coaching, but the Ravens have great coaching, they have even better players. I think that there is, going into this game, obviously a very massive disparity in reputation, specifically pertaining to the playoffs between Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. But I think that Lamar Jackson, this is his time to shine. And if Mahomes is able to pull off this upset win against the number one scoring defense in the NFL, I don't think I'm ever going to pick against him again. I'm just putting that out there now. But I liked them against the Bills last week, but I just think that was a little bit too, yes, their offense looked great, but that Bills defense was dealing with so many injuries on that side to their key players. I think that the Ravens have a lot more to throw at them. If Marlon Humphrey comes back too, that's just another body to help with the Travis Kelce matchup. Ronald Darby was really good last week. He was incredible, really, for the beginning of his career. Has sort of fallen off the map a little bit more, and he's bounced around some, but I think he's still a very solid player. He did a great job with the Nico Collins matchup last week, and I think that it was almost good experience for him then. If they get Humphrey back, that makes them only that much better. But I think that it's going to come down to, I think the Ravens are going to be able to run all over the Chiefs' defense. Now, the key is going to be turnovers, of course, because if you look at the regular season between these two very good defenses, the Ravens were significantly better at turning the ball over than the Chiefs' defense was, and neither of these teams on offense have been turning the ball over through their early playoff wins. But I think that really, despite the disparity in how many more turnovers the Ravens defense created, I think that if they give the Chiefs short fields, Mahomes is going to capitalize on that, make them drive down the field against your very amazing defense. If you give them a short field, you're going to get hurt. You're going to be giving them points, and Mahomes is going to take advantage. I do have the Ravens in this matchup, though, and honestly, I think it's going to be a good game, but I think that the Ravens cover the 4 points. I think that, they're going to score points, in my opinion. And yes, the Chiefs' defense has been great, but I think that, again, up front in the trenches, they're going to not really get stopped by the Chiefs. It's a matter of, can the Chiefs put up points and match that against the Ravens' defense? I'm not sure. I know their offenses looked better as of late, but there was a very large sample size during the regular season of them being a little underwhelming. Now, just final thoughts here. Mahomes is 9-1-1 against the spread as an underdog in his career. He is 8-3 straight up. So I understand that I'm putting myself at a little bit of a risky point here going against Patrick Mahomes, but I do think that this is the Ravens' year. So that is my predictions on this Chiefs versus Ravens matchup. We're going to be hitting a quick break, but when we come back, I'm going to be then giving my thoughts on the Lions versus 49ers game that's taking place on Sunday as well in the NFC, so stick with us.